Hello, everyone. Welcome to Osquery Office Hours. It is August 15th. Here in Boston, it's rainy. And at least around here, we have the Perseid meteor shower happening. So if you're somewhere where that's visible, maybe everywhere in the Northern Hemisphere, I don't actually know, and it's dark near you, I recommend checking it out at night if you're awake. Anyhow, Osquery things. I'm not sure I have much for announcements. We declared 591 stable a little while ago. I think I updated the website maybe since we last met, so that's a little bit like an announcement. That's what I've got. Other folks? Okay. Well, next section is sort of an open section for questions, issues, PRs, anything people want to discuss. Generally, this is designed as a place for people to bring stuff up that they didn't feel like merited an agenda item, stuff like that. So I'll pause a moment to see if anyone's here with help questions.
I was curious about code signing Osquery, and if you had context on, if that's something we're interested in doing internally and have now gotten the endpoint security entitlement, like how big of a lift that is, if there is ability to kind of view the code signing workflows that Osquery uses, because I noticed it was a private repository. So yeah, I was curious about that.
It's a private repository mostly so that we just don't get any people trying to PR against it. Not because it's anything real secret. We just kind of don't even want to deal with noise there. We could probably either just share them with you or add you to it as a read-only as a viewer. Like either seems okay.
And I can also give you a quick rundown on kind of what's required once you have the entitlement on. And I do not know how you're building it, but you'll need to create like the XML plist file with your own team ID and make sure that's like matched everywhere. And because io.osquery.agent is now registered to us, you cannot use that. So you'll have to change the bundle IDs everywhere.
Makes sense.
And then basically code sign the binary, the PKG, and it's kind of gnarly the first time, but once you kind of do it once or twice, it gets easier or it's straightforward.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I figured, it'd be great to have read-only or some copy to get bootstrapped from the work you all have done already.
Is everyone cool with giving Brad read-only access to that repo?
I think it's probably fine. It feels slightly weird, but not that weird. Brad, can you send me your username?
Yeah, I can Slack it to you.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's the Dash Figma one that you've put PRs in with, I assume.
Yeah.
I have that page open. If everyone's cool with it, I can just do the needful.
Same, but yeah, go for it. I think it's fine.
Okay. Awesome.
I also opened it.
I wasn't sure like what was in there exactly, but I figured it would help my efforts.
Yeah, no, there's nothing real weird in it. We just sort of have it isolated to kind of just cut down on noise. Yeah, I think if you just invite him as a viewer, it seems totally fine.
It's done. Yeah, Brad, let us know if you have access. And sounds like syncing with Charvel on the how to use it makes sense.
I'm curious a little bit about what drives you to want to code sign it internally. Mostly just because that's interesting.
Yeah, I think mostly just having the ability to get patches in faster, potentially. I don't think it's super high priority for us, but now that we have gotten the entitlement, knowing that that's possible to be able to do a kind of end-to-end build ourselves and push it out is just pretty nice. And I think also for even submitting PRs upstream, the goal is definitely to like stay close to upstream. But being able to like do the PR, test it on our own fleet, and then say, hey, this actually like worked and did what we needed it to do. We will be conducive to better PRs as well.
I think there's a couple of interesting other threads to pull on there. I'm just trying to take minutes and talk at the same time, so forgive me. Okay, so I think there's some other interesting threads there. And none of this precludes your ability to code sign, obviously. Yeah. I'll mention related to that, like at Collide, we don't use the Osquery packages because we find them too weird. But we do use the actual Osquery code signed app bundle because we're like, nah, Osquery signed is good enough. So that's how we do it internally. But
same at Fleet.
Yeah.
We use the binaries and we use the app bundles, but we have our own packaging tooling that generates Fleet specific packages.
We have a Figma specific package as well that is wrapping. Yeah, I think that's basically what we're doing now. So yeah, we'll depend. I guess it depends a little bit on how hard it is to set up the code signing and such.
It's not that hard.
But it didn't seem like it was too hard, so it could be a nice. I think maybe the iteration really.
I can tell you that Collide uses the Osquery, and I suspect this is true for Fleet, but I can't speak for Zach. That our choice to use the upstream signed Osquery binary is a very intentional choice to indicate that we are shipping the upstream version of the software and not some weird fork.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. So I think it's not. If you're intending to push your own, then totally makes sense to sign your own. But yeah, I think that we both have the same philosophy around like, we're just shipping Osquery. Like we're not doing anything funny here.
The other thing, I mean, none of that matters to you if internally it's your own company. Like no one's gonna argue with you. Little different as vendors. Exactly. One of the other interesting things there is, how can we figure out how to be more responsive to PRs, right? Like I appreciate that you want to test things internally. That's cool. But I feel bad if you're like, how can I want to ship stuff out faster? I'm just like, ooh, how can we do better? So that's.
I think it's a hard trade-off. I mean, definitely, I think there's probably things that could happen there with like predictability or being able to plan for it. I think there's probably always going to be a trade-off of like Osquery is serving a massive audience versus what we might want to do internally, or the trade-offs on risk internally of if I break something with the fleet that we're working in, that's different than Osquery breaking something for a much wider audience. So I think that trade-off is always going to make things go a little slower, but there could probably also be some more predictability of like, what is the kind of cadence of releases, and knowing if we have a bug fix, how long would that take to be merged and released out.
So we've talked about trying to move to a much more regular cadence on releases, and one of the sticking points is just automating more of the release flow. So if you want to throw effort into GitHub Actions, I am happy to coordinate that, and maybe we can move to an automated monthly release cycle. Like I would love to get releases more automated and make them monthly, I think.
Yeah.
So if that's a thing you might have resources for, I'd be happy to take PRs and talk about that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'll check back in when I might have time to do that potentially. I think it'll depend. I want to play around with just what is the signing like? What are some of the automations? GitHub Actions, learn more about that internally. And then if we're like, okay, I think I know enough now where I could help do this for the project. Would definitely be happy to reach out and see if that makes sense.
Feel free to drop in office
at least
hours
a month or so. Just when I'll
Slack are here, however.
Yeah.
I think it would be interesting to get us to a more regular thing. I know that's a thing Trail of Bits has also talked up over time, is how can we have more predictable releases and things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because I think as someone who now I'm more used to contributing and the cadences and stuff, but definitely when I was first starting, I'm like, I have no idea, how long this will take to get reviewed, get
Mhm.
merged, release cut, all of that. But yeah,
Yeah,
definitely been happy with the reviews lately and the releases. Lots of stuff in 5.91 is helping and running for us pretty well now. So
Mhm.
appreciate that.
Okay. Anyone want to say other stuff about code signing and release process? If not, next agenda item is macOS ES-FIM. Probably Charvel.
Yeah, I have a PR up. It's nice that we can use the Ventura APIs to target just the file paths we want and get open events tested internally by me on macOS 11, 12, 13, doesn't break. The new feature, of course, only works on macOS 13. And it's also been used by Chris Long, and he helped with testing and running it on his fleet, and seems to be working great.
You said there's a PR up.
There is a PR up.
This is 8114.
I think so. Yes.
The new one from you.
Yeah.
Okay, I stuck in the minutes. I'll try and review it, I guess.
Yeah. Brad, also, you've been doing a lot of endpoint security stuff. Feel free to poke around and give suggestions, feedback.
Yeah, happy to. That looks great as a feature. So definitely look at the PR. Yeah, we've been exploring
Probably missed out on. Okay.
Like the Santa side of file authorization, but having something in OSQuery that's lighter weight to just watch some paths as well that we don't need to lock down in particular to certain team IDs is definitely helpful.
Okay. We'll try and get that reviewed. I think as ever, there are lots of PRs.
I took a crack at a few of them today.
Oh,
Actually,
thank you.
built locally and kind of ran through the code, and including the block devices one. Yeah, today was my code review day.
Thank you. Are there any PRs anyone feels like we need to talk about? Oh, looking down the list, Brad, I have a question for you. On your PR 8054 ES process events, which was about quoting spaces.
Yep.
I feel like Charvel approved this. I feel like I left myself in a state where I had no idea what correct is.
So I kind of echoed what Stefano commented there, and the reason is from endpoint security, what we get is a array back, right? So we just walk through the array, so we know whether it's argarg is one index or argarg are two separate elements of that. Ideally, this should have been a comma separated list, but I think changing that would be breaking backwards compatibility. So I think.
What if we added a new column and just included it as a JSON array?
And yeah, that's something that I've been thinking of, because with events, we'll naturally get nested data. And I think we'll need to kind of revisit this over and over, not this particular one, but this kind of topic over and over. And yeah, I think JSON array works. I know a few other folks who do that.
So I think that my general stance, I want to say this less dogmatically, what I found working inside Launcher and someone inside Osquery is that as accurately as we can present the data, the easier it will be to consume. And since SQLite and this Osquery have good JSON support, I would advocate for just bubbling it up as JSON directly, which is, you know, a serialization format that anything can process, and you don't have to deal with, oh, what did my quotes do and how are they nested, and you know, instead if we can just cast it to JSON and be done with it. So we started doing that. There's one table in Osquery that does that now, and I can't quite remember which one we added it to. It was like
I remember seeing there was one that did that.
Windows Search has a JSON column for extra data. So I would, I won't block this PR if y'all still think it's what makes sense, but I would maybe instead advocate like add a column that just has straight JSON output, and then, you know, this one can be like display-ish and hand wave.
Yeah, I think yeah, I wasn't sure either what, you know, you all would prefer. Went with this is because it was a bit more minimal, and even if it's the display column, it kind of makes the display more accurate too. Like if you're displaying, you know, the command line from this, you can now actually see, you know, at least by eye, and it's not too hard to parse, I don't think, but not as easy as JSON would be, certainly. Yeah, so that was why I went with this approach, but definitely JSON array sounds good. I think one issue, or not issue, but like thing with ES process events is it has tons of columns, and how much are we worried about the proliferation of columns? I don't know if that's a big concern or not.
Not really.
More that I think would be interesting to put in ES process events too, actually, was looking at that separately from this.
So if you were worried about a proliferation of columns, especially that most people didn't care about, what I would advise is sort of looking at, this was what we did for Windows Search, either going a full EAV route, or sort of finding this interesting hybrid model where for Windows Search, there's a hidden column that lets you specify the additional columns you want the information for, which gets populated into a JSON hash on a hidden column. So you can sort of like the simple select star gives you, you know, like 5 things. And if you want any of the other 1,000, you can bake them into the JSON data. And I think that model is probably good because it feels like a good balance between not too much data, usability, and then giving you the rope to build something much bigger. So I don't know if that helps or not.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the columns and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine most people getting to this table are also able to kind of select the ones they want somewhat intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
So I know like a lot of folks who deploy endpoint security tables in production, they just collect everything and then do everything on the SIM. Basically,
yeah,
Splunk and gather alerting and intelligence there. They just like grab all the data from Osquery.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess kind of for that PR, you know, up to you all as well. I think it's still useful to have the quoting, but you know, if we want to add a JSON array or something, yeah, I think it would work for us either way, really. This part, we're also parsing on the server and figuring out, you know, what these were.
Yeah,
I think we might be parsing on the server and putting it back into a JSON array now. So having a JSON array will just simplify that process.
I am wholly supportive of of feeding complex data back as JSON and not having to fight with how to marshal and unmarshal it. So take that as encouragement. Other PRs anyone wants to think about or has questions about?
kind of similar to the so the Windows search table, the schema is still text, right? We are not changing the column type
I don't
to
remember.
JSON.
Are you telling me that or asking me that?
I'm asking you that. I'm trying to look up that PR, but I don't know which number. So
I was going to go look it up in the schema list.
it is text. Okay.
It's text. I don't know. Do we have a JSON column type?
SQLite has support for it though, but I don't think we
It's
do.
not a type though, I don't think. Like I think it would just be a text column and then SQLite will happily run JSON
Yeah.
functions on text columns. And also I guess remember that SQLite is also really dynamically typed and column types are sort of advisory. So you could really run any operation on any column and SQLite will try to do it.
Yeah, secretly it's all text under the hood. But I don't know that Osquery has a JSON column type. So I think you just run SQLite operators on the text, run the JSON operators on the text columns and it should be okay. Do people want to end early? People want to go groveling PRs together?
I can do PRs together.
Okay, well, let's take a look. Okay. You left me some comments on block devices. I will try and look at those. It sounds like we think we should just merge Brad's ES process events. Thank you, Zach. Let's see.
There's a Yandex one, but I have no idea how to even test it, or do you want to keep supporting
which
it?
Which is the index one? Oh, that was like metadata on one of the clouds or
Metadata
something?
on, yeah.
Yeah.
8086.
I thought that felt like relatively small, and I was just kind of going to stare at it and decide it was fine. Right. It looks like it's, here we are fetching some internal JSON data, and we'll just parse some other columns out of it. So it's probably okay. I haven't stared super hard. If I go back a little bit further, 8014 and 8004 are both maybe interesting ones that, I don't know, they're sort of things around Windows and code cleanliness. 8067 sounds kind of like a notable one too. Someone.
I don't know why the CI is not doing anything for that one.
For 8067?
Yeah, it's been this.
Let's just close and reopen it.
Okay.
Let's see if CI wakes up now.
Nope. Oh yeah. Okay.
It may have happened like in the middle of a GitHub outage or something. So. 8077 is another kind of one that sounds like it's maybe important and non-trivial.
I left a question on that, but otherwise it looks okay.
Oh, sweet. Okay, well, thanks for taking a look at that. I'm just going to go quickly through and merge some of these approved things. Review. Okay, not that there's a lot of approved things, but okay. And of course, also getting a stream of messages from my office because it's daytime. Okay, I think I just approved. I think I just merged the ones that were approved. Charvel, is yours simple enough that we can review it on the phone? Let's see. Looks like you declared some stuff. Boring, 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 boring. If flags, yes, type. This might be slightly too complicated for me to review on the phone, but let's see. I don't know if anyone else wants to look at 8114.
The main question I have is if you've tested the performance on like 11 and 12, because I know the muting changed, and I don't know if it works very well.
So that's the thing. If you run it on 11 and 12, you're just not gonna. This is only supported on 13, basically.
Yeah.
So I just bail out if it's 11 and 12, and there is an explicit. I need to update the documentation. There's an explicit flag to enable open events. Other than that, it's. I wish Apple backported these APIs, but they don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be the main thing, because I know that was something with Santa. It also, I think we want to make sure that on 12, I guess if someone doesn't pass the flag, that will make things work. But if they do pass the flag, but it basically doesn't work on 12, that could still be not ideal behavior, I guess. Like if the events are being collected and it's burning, tons of CPU.
So this doesn't change anything for macOS 11 and 12. Like you can take, this code and whatever and just run it with your current configuration. It won't change anything. There is a new flag to enable open events. And on macOS 13, if you have a file paths in your config, then it'll only subscribe for those files and kind of invert the muting, basically, as in Apple's jargon.
Yeah, I think that could work. I think the sharp edge is if you push out the same config to all your clients and think you're only monitoring 2 paths. But on macOS 12, that actually makes it monitor all of the paths.
So that So it gets ignored, like the file paths only kind of gets accessed if you're running on Ventura newer.
Yeah. But then does that mean on 12 that the system is streaming all of the open events to
if you enable open events? Yeah.
I guess that maybe that will work for people on 12 in some cases, so it's fair to support it. I don't think that worked for us with Santa.
So I think part of what Brad's saying maybe is that the muting code supports both operating systems, but the flag, it might be a mistake to turn that flag on
12. Yeah, I think
On
that's
12.
it's like, are we just offering a way to make a mistake, or is it actually useful to people to have it on 12? That would be a better way of stating it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like, is it useful, and how do you support people in a mixed environment who want it on 13? Is I think a good question.
I can update the flag to only be enabled on 13 as well.
I mean, I guess users on 12 don't have this functionality today, right?
Exactly.
And do we think it's a bad idea to do this on 12?
So I have a 12 machine right here. I've been testing on it. It's been okay. It's not as good as the Ventura one, but it's also not as bad as macOS 11. It is a stream of events, and there is an explicit, like, yes, give me the fire hose kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And like the worst case would be, I think we'll have dropped events. Like we won't have, like, the endpoint security subsystem will just,
I assume
drop
we'll
events
have high
and
CPU load and general noise from that. I think that it's probably reasonable just to limit this to macOS 13.
Okay.
On the theory that we're not taking functionality away from anyone. And I think there are probably two circumstances. One circumstance is people on 12 who want this functionality. And the other circumstance is people with a mixed deployment who absolutely do not want it on 12. And then I think we should ask ourselves which of those two is more common.
Yeah.
Or is there a way to make it easier to handle the mixed deployment case? I think with being a config flag, it's kind of hard because you have to know your machine or your client, what it's running on. Versus if it was like a discovery query somehow, but I don't think that hooks into the event subsystem.
Yeah. So like this flag can be just a no-op on macOS 11 and 12 and just only come and play on 13. And that's certainly like a small change.
I mean, I think that's probably reasonable if we just make it, I think today we have to just, before this merges, we have to decide which of the two scenarios we want to make easier. And given that we don't have this functionality yet, I might just say, let's just lock it down to 13 and higher, or deny list it on 11 and 12. And if someone shows up and is like, oh, I really want this on 11 and 12, then, we can kind of reevaluate. But that feels like a good point.
I personally don't know anyone who like, I think like everyone that I know and this is catering to has moved on to macOS 13. So I'm okay locking it down to just 13, and then if people really want it, they'll let us know, I guess.
I think that's a reasonable choice, yeah. And if you do that by deny listing 11 and 12 or by making it like 13 or greater is implementation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still gonna like leave the flag in. So
Yeah.
because if someone passes a flag and it's running on 12 and it doesn't know about
Yeah.
the flag, then it will complain.
Yeah, yeah,
So okay, I'll update that a little
I'm
later
going to
today.
comment in it just so that if someone asks us about it, we maybe remember why we did this.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Stefano.
Yeah, I was
good.
going to say I did a quick review. But yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be mostly if someone writes something wrong in the config file. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Always nice to have the extra checks.
Right. I'm heading out too. Thanks, everyone. Nice talking to you all.
Thank you, Brad.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We could call it. I don't know if anyone wants to talk about any other things. If not, I'd probably just call it. So thank you all for work and PRs and time and reviews and everything. Yeah, I think maybe that's today's meeting.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.